South Park has been on the air since August 13th, 1997. 28 seasons, 338 episodes. It was the first weekly television program ever rated TVMA. It has been banned in multiple countries, censored by its own network, and targeted by religious organizations, governments, and advocacy groups on nearly every continent. The show's creators, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, built their careers on a simple premise. Take 4 foul-mouthed kids in a small Colorado mountain town and use them to say the things nobody else on television would dare to say. And for almost 3 decades, that's exactly what they've done. South Park has mocked every religion, every political party, every celebrity, every social movement, and every sacred cow that Western culture has produced. It is a show defined by irreverence, by profanity, by toilet humor so aggressive it once dropped a single swear word uncensored 162 times in a single episode. That was season 5's It Hits the Fan, by the way, in case you were curious. So when someone tells you that South Park made them cry, your first instinct is probably to laugh. And honestly, that's fair. This is not a show that earns its reputation through emotional vulnerability. This is a show where a character gets abducted by aliens in the very first episode, where a character's running gag is dying violently every week, where one of the main characters once fed someone their own parents in a bowl of chili. These are not the ingredients of prestige drama. These are not the building blocks of heartfelt television. And yet here we are. Because buried inside this show, scattered across nearly 3 decades of chaos and cruelty and comedy, there are episodes that carry a kind of emotional weight you simply do not expect. Moments of genuine tenderness that land harder precisely because they come from a place that never promised you tenderness. Moments where the shock isn't the profanity or the violence. The shock is that you're sitting there watching South Park and you realize your eyes are wet. Tonight, we're going to walk through those episodes, the ones that caught audiences completely off guard. The ones where Parker and Stone set aside the satire just long enough to say something painfully honest about grief, about loneliness, about growing up, about what it means to love people in a world that doesn't always make loving easy. These are the most unexpectedly heartfelt episodes in South Park's history. And if you're settling in for the night, if you're looking for something to carry you off to sleep, these stories have a warmth to them that might surprise you, so get comfortable. Let the chaos of the day fade out. And let's begin with the episode that took the show's oldest joke and turned it into something that broke people's hearts. For the first 4.5 seasons of South Park, Kenny McCormick died in almost every single episode. That was his thing. That was his entire purpose in the show's formula. Every week, some absurd catastrophe would befall this poor kid in the orange parka. His friends would shout the show's iconic catchphrase, and then by the next episode, he'd be back like nothing happened. Nobody questioned it. Nobody mourned. It was a gag. A dark, repetitive, wonderfully morbid gag that became one of the most recognizable bits in television history. Kenny met his end in every way imaginable across those early seasons. The show treated his deaths with the emotional weight of a punchline, because that's all they were. Punchlines. And then came season 5, episode 13. Kenny Dies. It aired on December 5th, 2001, written and directed by Trey Parker. And from the moment the episode begins, something feels different. There's no absurd setup, no elaborate Rube Goldberg machine of destruction leading to Kenny's demise. Instead, the boys are called to the principal's office and told that Kenny has been diagnosed with a terminal muscular disease. Not a cartoon disease, not an alien virus or a curse from an ancient artifact. A real disease. The kind that puts a child in a hospital bed and keeps him there while his body slowly stops working. The town of South Park reacts the way real people react when a child is dying. There's shock, there's sadness, there's that specific kind of helplessness that settles over a community when something terrible is happening to someone young and there's nothing anyone can do about it. And for the first time in 78 episodes, Kenny's impending death is not funny. It is not a gag, it is treated with complete, devastating sincerity. What makes this episode extraordinary is how it weaponizes the audience's own history with the show against them. You have watched Kenny die dozens and dozens of times. You have laughed at it. You have come to expect it. The show trained you over 4.5 years to treat Kenny's death as disposable entertainment. And now in this episode, it asks you to actually care. It asks you to sit with the reality of what it means for a child to be dying in a hospital bed while his friends try to figure out how to say goodbye. And because you spent all those years laughing, because you internalized that Kenny's death didn't matter, the guilt of that hits you like a freight train. The show didn't just make Kenny's death sad, it made you complicit in not caring about it before. Stan Marsh, who has watched his friend die more times than any person should have to, cannot bring himself to visit Kenny in the hospital. This is not played for comedy. Stan is not being selfish or lazy or distracted by some wacky subplot. He is genuinely deeply afraid. He cannot face the reality of his friend lying in a hospital bed, connected to machines, wasting away. Every time someone suggests he go visit Kenny, Stan finds a reason not to. He makes excuses, he avoids the topic. He does what real people do when someone they love is dying. He hides from it, because seeing Kenny like that would make it real, and Stan is not ready for it to be real. Kyle, on the other hand, does visit. He sits with Kenny. He brings him things. At one point, he shows Kenny a drawing that Butters made of all of them together on a rocket ship. It's a small, simple gesture, a kid showing his dying friend a picture that another kid drew, and it is one of the most quietly devastating moments in the show's history. There's no orchestral swell, no dramatic speech, just Kyle sitting next to his friend's hospital bed, holding up a crayon drawing and trying to pretend that everything is going to be okay. And then there's Cartman, Eric Cartman, the show's resident sociopath, the character responsible for what fans consistently vote as the single darkest moment in the show's history. Cartman does something in this episode that initially seems like genuine compassion. He discovers that stem cell research might be able to save Kenny's life, but the government has just banned it. So Cartman goes to Washington, he stands before the House of Representatives, and he gives an impassioned speech about his dying friend, about how stem cells could save Kenny, about how the ban is condemning children to death. He even sings "Heat of the Moment" by Asia to the assembled congressmen. And it works. The ban is lifted. For a few minutes, you believe that Eric Cartman has a heart. You believe that somewhere underneath all that cruelty and selfishness, there is a person who genuinely loves his friend and is willing to fight for him. The show lets you sit with that belief. It lets you feel something warm toward Cartman. And then it pulls the rug out from under you in the most Cartman way possible. Because Cartman didn't campaign to lift the stem cell ban to save Kenny. He did it because earlier in the episode, he'd stumbled across a truckload of biological specimens from a crashed transport vehicle and had been trying to sell them for profit. When the government banned stem cell research, his customer base evaporated. His speech to Congress, his tears, his performance of Heat of the Moment, all of it was in service of getting the ban lifted so he could resume his scheme. At the end of the episode, Cartman uses the stem cells not to save Kenny, but to clone a Shakey's Pizza restaurant. Kenny dies. For real. Stan finally works up the courage to go to the hospital. He walks through the halls. He approaches Kenny's room, and when he gets there, Kenny is already gone. Stan never got to say goodbye. He spent the entire episode avoiding the one thing he needed to do. And by the time he was ready to face it, it was too late. This is what grief actually looks like for a lot of people. It's not dramatic deathbed confessions or tearful farewells. It's avoidance and regret. It's showing up too late because you were too scared to show up on time. It's living with the knowledge that you could have been there and you weren't. Not because you didn't care, but because caring was too painful. Stan's failure to say goodbye to Kenny is one of the most honest depictions of how children and adults process impending loss that has ever appeared on television. And it appeared on a show where the absurd is the norm and nothing is too ridiculous to animate. Parker and Stone later revealed in DVD commentary that they had originally planned to kill off Kyle, not Kenny. But they decided Kenny made more sense because they had genuinely run out of new ways to make his weekly death interesting. They were tired of the gag. And so they retired it by making it matter for the first and only time. Kenny didn't return to the show for 17 episodes. He was absent for the entirety of season 6, not reappearing until the season finale, Red Sleigh Down. For an entire year of South Park, the show existed without its fourth main character. The empty space where Kenny should have been was itself a kind of mourning. The episode aired on December 5th, 2001, 3 months after September 11th. This is worth noting not because the episode directly addresses the attacks, but because the emotional landscape of America at that moment was one of raw, unprocessed grief. Audiences were primed for sadness in a way they hadn't been before. And an episode of South Park that treated death with genuine seriousness, that asked its audience to sit with loss rather than laugh at it, landed differently than it might have at any other time. People who had never cried at South Park cried at this one. People who had spent years laughing at Kenny's deaths suddenly felt the weight of every single one of them. What Kenny Dies teaches us, and what makes it such a perfect starting point for this conversation, is that the context of emotion matters as much as the emotion itself. Sadness in a drama is expected, sadness in a comedy is disarming. When a show that has spent years conditioning you to laugh at death suddenly asks you to grieve, the emotional impact is multiplied by the contrast. You had your guard down, you weren't braced for it, and that's why it hit so hard. There's a moment near the end of the episode, after Kenny has passed, where Chef talks to Stan about death. Chef, voiced by Isaac Hayes, who had been the boys' moral compass and confidant since the very first season, sits Stan down and explains that God takes the people closest to us because, in Chef's words, it makes God feel better about himself. He says that the tears of those left behind are what give God his great power. It's a dark, strange, almost cruel piece of theology. But coming from Chef, delivered with the warmth and gravity that Hayes brought to everything he did on the show, it functions as a kind of comfort. Not because it makes death okay, but because it acknowledges that death is cruel and unfair, and that sometimes the best you can do is sit with someone who understands that. Chef would eventually leave the show too, but that's a story for later. Kenny's death in this episode wasn't just a narrative choice. It was the show growing up in real time. It was Parker and Stone acknowledging that the gags they'd been running for 5 years had an emotional reality beneath them that they'd been ignoring. Kenny was always more than a punchline. He was a kid from a poor family with parents who neglected him, who wore the same orange parka every day because it was probably the only coat he owned. His deaths were funny because the show told you they were funny, but strip away the laugh track and the catchphrase and the weekly reset, and what you have is a child who suffers more than anyone else in the show and receives the least recognition for it. Kenny Dies was the first time South Park acknowledged that, and it wouldn't be the last. Kenny's death taught the audience that South Park could make them grieve for a character they'd spent years treating as disposable. But the show had another kind of emotional devastation in store, one that didn't involve death at all, one that hit closer to home than any funeral ever could. Because the next episode we need to talk about is about something arguably worse than dying. It's about waking up one morning and realizing that nothing in the world makes you happy anymore. It's about watching everything you used to love turn into something unrecognizable. It's about growing old. Season 15, Episode 7. You're Getting Old. If you ask longtime South Park fans which episode of the show is the most depressing thing Parker and Stone have ever produced, this is the one that comes up almost every single time. Not the saddest moment, not the most bittersweet scene, the most depressing episode, the whole thing, start to finish. 22 minutes of existential dread disguised as a cartoon about a kid's 10th birthday party. The setup sounds harmless enough. Stan Marsh is turning 10 years old. 10. His friends throw him a party. There's a new genre of music the kids are into called tween wave, which sounds to the adults like nothing but noise over drum beats. Randy, Stan's dad, is horrified by it. The parents confiscate the music and try to convince the kids that their generation's music, the Police, Synchronicity era stuff, is objectively better. But when the boys listen to what their parents consider good music, it sounds just as terrible to them. This is standard South Park fare, a generational gap being played for absurdist comedy. You've seen this kind of thing from the show 100 times, but then something shifts. Stan goes home that night and secretly listens to the tween wave music that his parents confiscated. And for the first time, it doesn't sound good to him either. It sounds terrible. He confesses this to Kyle the next morning. Something has changed inside Stan, and he doesn't know what it is or how to fix it. Afraid that something is wrong with him, Stan visits a doctor named Dr. Carroll. The doctor runs tests and initially tells Stan that his musical tastes are simply changing as he gets older. This is normal, this happens to everyone. But during these tests, Stan begins to perceive everything around him, not just music, as literal garbage. Movies look like garbage. Ice cream tastes like garbage. Trailers for upcoming films appear to Stan as unwatchable nonsense. The doctor's diagnosis is blunt and devastating. Stan, according to this doctor, has become a cynical jerk. Now, on the surface, this is a joke. It's South Park being South Park, using crude imagery to make a point about how getting older can make you jaded. But watch the episode and you realize very quickly that the crude imagery is just the delivery mechanism. What's actually being depicted is clinical depression. Stan hasn't chosen to see everything as garbage. It's happening to him. He wakes up one day and the things that used to bring him joy no longer do. The colors have drained out of his world. The music that connected him to his friends sounds like noise. The movies that used to excite him look like nothing. He didn't ask for this, he can't control it. And nobody around him understands what's happening. Kyle, Kenny, and Cartman stop hanging out with Stan. Not because they're cruel, not because they've abandoned him out of malice. They stop hanging out with him because being around Stan has become exhausting. He's become, in their words, a major buzzkill. Everything they try to share with him gets filtered through his cynicism and comes back flat and joyless. This is one of the most painful and realistic depictions of how depression affects relationships that you'll find in any medium. The people around you don't leave because they hate you. They leave because your illness makes it impossible for them to reach you, and eventually they get tired of trying. You become an emotional black hole, absorbing everyone's energy and returning nothing. And the worst part is that you can see it happening and you can't stop it. The fracture between Stan and Kyle is the emotional centerpiece of the episode. These two have been best friends since the pilot. Their friendship is arguably the single most important relationship in the entire show. It's the one constant in a universe of chaos. And in this episode, it breaks. There's a scene where Kyle tries to talk to Stan, tries to get through to him, and as Kyle speaks, his face literally transforms in Stan's perception into a large, talking pile of garbage. Stan stares at what used to be his best friend and sees nothing but waste where a person should be. He doesn't scream, he doesn't cry, he just turns and walks away, quietly, calmly, as if something inside him has simply switched off. That scene is devastating because of what it represents. Depression doesn't just change how you see the world, it changes how you see the people you love. The warmth you once felt toward them gets buried under a layer of numbness so thick you can't even remember what it felt like to care. Kyle hasn't changed. Kyle is still Kyle. But Stan can no longer perceive the friend he's known his entire life as anything other than another piece of a world that has turned to garbage around him. Meanwhile, a parallel story is unfolding with Stan's parents. Randy Marsh, in an attempt to hold on to his fading youth, has started performing tween wave music at the local bowling alley under the stage name Steamy Ray Vaughan. His act involves deliberately humiliating himself on stage. This is played for laughs, obviously. But when Sharon, Stan's mom, confronts Randy about it, the conversation turns serious in a way that South Park conversations almost never do. Randy admits that the reason he keeps doing strange, ridiculous things, and the show is remarkably self-aware here, referencing Randy's many absurd storylines over the years, from getting into fights at baseball games to obsessively playing World of Warcraft to becoming a celebrity chef, is because he's unhappy. Sharon admits she's unhappy too. They look at each other and acknowledge quietly and sadly that they've grown apart, that they don't feel the same way about each other anymore, that the marriage that has been a background fixture of the show for 15 seasons is falling apart. And then the episode ends, and this is where You're Getting Old transcends everything South Park has ever done emotionally. There is no resolution, there is no punchline, there is no last-minute twist that resets the status quo. Instead, Fleetwood Mac's Landslide begins to play, and the show gives us a wordless montage. Kyle approaches Stan on the street, sees that Stan is still broken, and turns and walks away without saying anything. Sharon and Shelley pack up boxes in the kitchen. A real estate agent hammers a "for sale" sign into the front lawn of the Marsh family home. Randy loads a U-Haul truck and drives away, looking back one final time through the rearview mirror. Sharon and the kids unpack boxes in a new, unfamiliar apartment. Kyle and Cartman sit together playing Xbox, sharing a moment of friendship that Stan is no longer part of. And finally, the last shot. Stan lying alone on a bed in his new room, in his new home, staring at the ceiling. The credits roll in complete silence. No show should be able to do that. No animated comedy about foul-mouthed children in Colorado should be able to make you feel like you just watched someone's life fall apart in real time. But You're Getting Old does it. It does it so effectively that multiple critics, including writers at Collider and IndieWire, have called it one of the few South Park episodes that makes you tear up from emotion instead of laughter. The landslide montage is, by a significant margin, the most emotionally devastating sequence the show has ever produced. What makes it hit so hard is the universality of what it's depicting. Everyone has had a version of this experience. Maybe not as dramatic, maybe not as sudden, but everyone has had a moment where they looked at something they used to love, a friendship, a hobby, a relationship, a song, and realized they couldn't feel what they used to feel. That the thing hadn't changed, they had, and there's a specific kind of grief in that realization that is different from losing something to death or distance. It's the grief of losing yourself, of waking up and discovering that the person who used to enjoy their life has been replaced by someone who can't. There's a strong meta-reading of this episode that's worth mentioning. Parker and Stone were deep into the show's 15th season when they made this. They had been writing South Park for 14 years at that point, and by many accounts, they were exhausted. They were questioning whether the show still had anything to say, whether the jokes still worked, whether the whole enterprise had become, to use the episode's central metaphor, garbage. Stan's cynicism reads as a direct expression of the creator's own creative fatigue. When Stan looks at the world and sees nothing but garbage, Parker and Stone might be looking at their own show and feeling the same thing. You're Getting Old is South Park having a nervous breakdown on camera and daring you to watch. The follow-up episode, which aired as Season 15's 8th episode, continued the story. Stan's parents are still divorced. Stan is still depressed. He gets misdiagnosed with Asperger's syndrome and ends up at a facility run by a group calling themselves the Secret Society of Cynics. People who, like Stan, have come to perceive the entire world as worthless. Their leader hands Stan a drink and tells him it's a serum that will allow him to interact with the illusion world that everyone else lives in. The implication is staggering. The solution the show offers Stan for his depression is numbing himself enough to function in a world that no longer brings him joy. By the end of the follow-up episode, things more or less return to normal. Stan's parents get back together. The status quo reasserts itself, but the resolution feels hollow by design. The show doesn't pretend that the reset button actually fixes anything. It just acknowledges that life goes on, even when you're not sure you want it to. The cynicism doesn't disappear, it gets managed. And there's something quietly terrifying about a show telling you that the best-case scenario for depression isn't recovery. It's learning to live with it. You're Getting Old is the episode South Park fans point to when someone says the show is incapable of genuine emotion. It's proof that beneath the profanity and the chaos and the toilet humor, Parker and Stone understand something fundamental about human suffering. They understand that the scariest thing in the world isn't a monster or a villain or a catastrophe. It's waking up one morning and realizing that the color has bled out of your life and you don't know how to get it back. It's watching your friendships dissolve. It's listening to your parents decide that they don't love each other anymore. It's lying alone in a strange room in a strange house and understanding for the first time that childhood is over and what comes next might not be any better. Stan Marsh turned 10 years old in that episode, and something in him broke. The show acknowledged it, explored it, and didn't pretend it could be fixed with a pep talk or a grand adventure or a reset at the end of the credits. It just let it be broken. And sometimes that honesty, the refusal to sugarcoat, is the most compassionate thing a story can do. You're Getting Old showed us what happens when the world turns gray and nothing feels worth caring about anymore. It showed us depression not as a villain to be defeated, but as a lens that changes how you see everything, including the people you love. And it ended with silence, which is exactly right, because when you're in that place, there's nothing anyone can say that helps. But here's the thing. South Park is a show that contains multitudes. For every episode that drags you into the darkness, there's another that pulls you back out. And the character who does the pulling, the one who consistently offers the antidote to despair in this show, is the last person you'd expect. He's a 9-year-old named Butters Stotch. He's been the show's punching bag for over 2 decades. He's been grounded more times than any character in television history, bullied by his classmates, manipulated by Cartman, and and put in danger by his own parents. And somehow, despite all of it, he's the one who delivers the most emotionally mature and philosophically beautiful speech the show has ever written. He delivers it in the back of a restaurant parking lot while crying in the rain after getting his heart broken for the very first time. Season 7, Episode 14, Raisins. It aired on December 10th, 2003, written and directed by Trey Parker. And to understand why this episode matters, you need to understand who Butterscotch is and why his voice carries a kind of emotional authority that no other character on this show possesses. Butters is, by design, the softest character in South Park. He's the kid who says, "Oh, hamburgers," when something goes wrong. He's the kid who gets grounded by his parents for things that aren't his fault, who gets manipulated by Cartman into schemes he doesn't understand, who trusts people long after any reasonable person would have stopped trusting. He is, in many ways, the opposite of what South Park values. The show rewards cynicism, cleverness, and the ability to see through nonsense. Butters has none of these qualities. He is sincere in a world that punishes sincerity. He is kind in a world that exploits kindness. He is hopeful in a world that mocks hope. And because of all that, when Butters says something meaningful, it lands with a force that nothing else on the show can match. His words don't carry the weight of intelligence or experience. They carry the weight of innocence. And innocence, it turns out, has its own kind of wisdom. Raisins begins with a breakup. Wendy Testaberger, Stan's on-again, off-again girlfriend since the first season, sends her friend BB to deliver the news during a football game. Wendy doesn't want to be with Stan anymore. She still wants to be friends, but the relationship is over. Stan doesn't take it well. In fact, Stan takes it about as badly as a 9-year-old can take anything. He spirals into a depression so deep that he stops going to school, stops leaving his bed, and eventually falls in with the Goth Kids, a group of perpetually gloomy children who hang out at Benny's, which is South Park's version of Denny's, drinking coffee and writing poetry about how pointless life is. This is the episode that introduced the Goth Kids, by the way. Parker wrote them into the script as a throwaway reference, just Kyle mentioning them in a single line of dialogue, and then decided it would be more interesting to actually create the characters. Matt Stone later said the idea of the Goth Kids drinking coffee at a diner was based on his own adolescent memories. He remembered the Goth Kids from his school hanging out at a Perkins restaurant for hours, ordering nothing but endless cups of coffee. That specificity, that grounding in real observation, is part of what makes South Park's emotional episodes work. Even the jokes have roots in something authentic. Stan's depression is played partly for comedy and partly straight. There's a scene where he sits in a booth at Benny's wearing all black, sipping coffee, and telling Kyle that he's breathing deep in darkness that envelops my soul. Kyle, understandably, is exasperated. He can see that Stan is wallowing. He can see that this isn't healthy. But he can't get through to Stan because Stan has decided that feeling nothing is preferable to feeling pain. The Goth Kids validate this decision. They tell Stan that caring about things is what conformists do, that the world is meaningless, and the sooner you accept that, the better. They invite him to join them at the cemetery to write poems about death and the pointlessness of existence. While Stan is sinking into his abyss, Butters is having his own romantic adventure. The boys, trying to cheer Stan up, take him to a restaurant called Raisins, which is South Park's parody of Hooters. It's a wings joint where all the waitresses use exaggerated friendliness and charm to squeeze tips out of their customers. The waitresses are all named after luxury car brands. There's Mercedes, there's Ferrari, there's Porsche, and there's Lexus, the girl Butters falls for. Butters mistakes Lexus's professional friendliness for genuine romantic interest. Butters mistakes Lexus's professional friendliness for something real. He's never had anyone pay this much attention to him before. He doesn't understand that her warmth is part of the job. He genuinely believes she cares about him. So he starts visiting Raisins every day, tipping Lexus with every dollar he can get his hands on, which happens to be his parents' money. He's spending their savings because he believes the two of them have something real. Butters, devastated, tells his parents to go to heck and storms out with Lexus, declaring that they're going to run away together. And Lexus, without a trace of guilt, casually tells him that they were never boyfriend and girlfriend. She doesn't even seem to understand why he's upset. He was a customer. She was doing her job. Butters' heart breaks, and the show does something remarkable with this heartbreak. It treats it with complete seriousness. There's no wink to the audience, no cutaway gag. Butters stand in the rain, crying, in almost exactly the same visual composition the show used when Stan's heart broke earlier in the episode. The parallel is deliberate. Two boys, both gutted by their first experience with romantic rejection, both standing in the rain, both trying to figure out how to exist in a world where the person they cared about doesn't care back. The goth kids find Butters crying in the parking lot. They see a kindred spirit. Here's another kid who's been chewed up and spit out by the cruelty of the world. They tell Stan to check out this tortured soul. They invite Butters to join their group, come to the cemetery, write poems about death, embrace the darkness, and Butters says no. What he says instead is one of the most quoted, most beloved, most genuinely moving lines of dialogue in the entire history of South Park. And it's worth walking through carefully because every word of it matters. Butters says, well, yeah, and I'm sad, but at the same time, I'm really happy that something could make me feel that sad. It's like, it makes me feel alive, you know? It makes me feel human. And the only way I could feel this sad now is if I felt something really good before. So I have to take the bad with the good, so I guess what I'm feeling is like a beautiful sadness. I guess that sounds stupid. One of the goth kids says, yeah, it does sound stupid. And Stan says, no, Butters, that doesn't sound stupid at all. There are television shows with $100 million budgets and rooms full of Emmy-winning writers that have never produced a line as emotionally intelligent as what Butters Stotch says in the parking lot of a Hooters parody while crying in the rain at the age of 9. Tim Kaine of the Herald and Review called this speech one of the most heartful and sincere soliloquies in the show's history. Fans have gotten it tattooed on their bodies. Therapists have referenced it. It became, without exaggeration, one of the defining philosophical statements of the entire series. And the reason it works, the reason it resonates across decades and demographics and language barriers, is that it articulates something most adults struggle to put into words. The idea that sadness isn't the enemy, that grief isn't something to be avoided or medicated or numbed, that the capacity to feel pain is direct evidence that you once felt joy and the joy was real, and it mattered. And no amount of heartbreak can retroactively erase the fact that you experienced something beautiful. Butters doesn't deny his pain. He doesn't minimize it. He doesn't pretend he's okay. He stands there, tears running down his face, and says that he would rather feel this, all of this, than feel nothing at all. This is the philosophical opposite of what the goth kids represent. The goth kids have decided that because the world causes pain, the correct response is to withdraw, to stop caring, to treat everything as meaningless and everyone as a source of potential suffering. They've built a worldview around the avoidance of vulnerability. And Butters, who has arguably suffered more than any of them, who gets grounded and bullied and manipulated on a weekly basis, rejects that worldview entirely. He chooses to remain open. He chooses to keep feeling. He chooses to take the bad with the good because the good was worth having, even if it led to this. Stan hears this speech and something shifts in him, not dramatically, not with a big emotional outburst, just quietly. He looks at Butters, he looks at the goth kids, and he makes a choice. He tells the goth kids, I don't even know who I am anymore. I liked liking life a lot more than hating it. Forget you guys, I'm going home. The next day, Stan shows up at school in his regular clothes. He rejoins the football game. His friends welcome him back without making a big deal out of it. And when Wendy and her new boyfriend walk by, Stan handles it the only way a fourth grader in South Park knows how. He tells Wendy exactly what he thinks of her and lets her new boyfriend know too. It's crude, it's childish, and it's exactly right, because the lesson of the episode isn't that you should handle heartbreak with grace and maturity. The lesson is that you should handle it, that you should feel it, process it, and come out the other side still willing to engage with the world, even if your way of engaging is messy and imperfect. Butters walks away from the goth kids with one last line. He tells them that he'd rather be a crybaby than a goth kid, and then he leaves, alone, still sad, but alive with it. What Parker and Stone understood when they wrote this episode is that the opposite of depression isn't happiness, it's engagement. It's the willingness to remain in the arena, to keep feeling things even when what you're feeling hurts. The goth kids have opted out of the arena. Stan almost opted out too. Butters never even considered it, because for Butters, feeling pain is just the cost of being the kind of person who feels anything at all. and that cost, in his view, is always worth paying. This is the speech that defines Butters as a character for the rest of the series. From this point forward, no matter what the show throws at him, no matter how badly he's treated, Butters maintains this fundamental orientation toward life. He is, against all odds and against all logic, an optimist, not a naive optimist, not someone who pretends bad things don't happen, but an optimist in the deepest sense, someone who believes that the experience of being alive, with all its pain and disappointment and cruelty, is better than the alternative of not feeling anything at all. For the sleep audience tonight, this is the kind of idea worth carrying with you as you drift off. That the sadness you felt today or this week or this year isn't a malfunction. It's proof that something mattered to you. And the fact that things can matter to you, that you haven't lost the ability to care, is itself a kind of gift. Butters wouldn't call it a gift probably, he'd just say it makes him feel human, and maybe that's enough. Butters' philosophy of beautiful sadness came from a place of innocence. He hadn't been beaten down enough to stop believing that feeling things was worthwhile. But the show would test that belief much harder in a later episode, one that tackled something South Park almost never addresses with a straight face, one that took the show's most abused character and put him in a situation where the abuse wasn't funny at all, where there was no punchline, where a child standing up to his tormentor became one of the most powerful scenes the show has ever committed to screen. Season 16, Episode 5. Butterballs. This is the episode where South Park does something it almost never does. It addresses bullying completely straight. Not as satire, not as dark comedy, not as an exaggerated, absurdist scenario designed to make a larger cultural point. It puts a character in a situation of genuine, ongoing cruelty, and it asks you to sit with how that feels. Butters is being bullied, but not by Cartman, not by a kid at school, not by any of the usual tormentors the show has cycled through over the years. Butters is being bullied by his own grandmother. She's an elderly woman who lives in the Stotch household, and she has singled out Butters as the target of a systematic campaign of cruelty that goes far beyond what the word bullying typically implies. She hurts him when no one's looking, right at the dinner table while his parents are oblivious. She corners him when he's alone. She wears a menacing expression that shifts the moment anyone else enters the room, maintaining perfect plausible deniability while her grandson lives in constant fear. What makes this depiction so unsettling, and what critics and fans have consistently pointed out, is how realistic it is. TV Tropes describes the episode as containing one of the most realistic portrayals of bullying in the entire series. And they're right. The abuse isn't cartoonish or exaggerated in the way South Park abuse usually is. It's quiet. It's methodical. It happens in the spaces where no one is looking. Butters flinches when his grandmother moves. He makes excuses for his injuries. He doesn't tell anyone because he knows on some level that he won't be believed. Or worse, that nothing will change even if he is. Meanwhile, the show wraps a second plotline around the issue of bullying that functions as biting satire of how the wider culture handles the problem. Stan creates an anti-bullying video at school that catches the attention of a Hollywood executive. The video goes viral. Stan becomes the face of the anti-bullying movement. He appears on talk shows. He signs deals. The whole thing becomes a spectacle of self-congratulation where the actual victims of bullying are completely forgotten in favor of the people profiting from the awareness campaign. The message is clear. Society loves to talk about bullying. Society loves to make videos and hashtags and campaigns about bullying. But the actual day-to-day reality of being bullied, the quiet cruelty behind closed doors, the slow erosion of a child's sense of safety, gets lost in the noise. Stan drags Butters onto the Dr. Oz show as an example of a bullying victim. Butters sits in the studio chair, refusing to speak, while Dr. Oz pushes him to share his story. When Butters won't respond, Dr. Oz becomes aggressive, demanding to know if Butters even cares about bullying victims. This is a deliberate parallel to how media exploits suffering for ratings. Dr. Oz doesn't want to help Butters, he wants content. He wants a dramatic moment on camera that will make his audience feel something. And this is where Butters snaps. He lashes out at Dr. Oz on live television. The rage and fear and humiliation that have been building inside him come pouring out in a moment that shocks everyone watching, both in the show and in the audience. But the consequences are immediate and cruel. The country no longer sees Butters as a victim. The narrative flips. He's now seen as the problem. The anti-bullying movement wants nothing to do with him. The Hollywood executive yells at Stan. The whole thing collapses because the real experience of a bullied child, which is messy and ugly and doesn't fit neatly into a feel-good campaign, has ruined the marketable version of the story. And then comes the scene, the one that South Park fans remember, the one that for many people sits alongside Butters' beautiful sadness speech as proof that this character contains emotional depths the show barely deserves. It's nighttime. Butters walks into his grandmother's room. She's lying in bed. And Butters talks to her, quietly, without shouting, without crying, without the kind of dramatic soundtrack that a different show would put behind a scene like this. He tells her that he stood up for himself today, that he fought back for the first time. And then he says something that shifts the entire energy of the scene. He tells her that it felt good to fight back, but that ultimately it left him with a dark and empty feeling. The same kind of emptiness, he tells her, that he imagines she feels all the time. He tells her that he has realized something important. Bullies will always exist. There will always be people who hurt other people because it makes them feel powerful, or because their own lives are so hollow that cruelty is the only thing that fills the void. And when you're a child, when you're the one being bullied, it feels like it will last forever. Every day feels like an eternity. Every moment of fear feels like it will define the rest of your life. But it won't, Butters tells her. He will grow up. He will leave this house. He will build a life that is his own, away from her, away from the cruelty and the fear. And one day, when she is old and dying in a hospital bed, he will come visit her. And he will show her that he is still happy. That despite everything she did to him, he found a way to be okay. He will stand next to her bed and smile, and she will know that all her cruelty accomplished nothing. That she will die empty and miserable, and he will walk out of that hospital and continue living. His grandmother's face changes as he speaks. It shifts from irritation to surprise to something that almost looks like sadness. Not remorse, exactly, but the faint, awful recognition that this child has just described her future with perfect accuracy, that she's going to die alone and that the person she hurt the most is going to survive her and be fine. Butters walks out of the room. The scene ends. There is no follow-up. No resolution, no moment where the grandmother apologizes or changes her behavior. Because that's not how abuse works in real life. Abusers don't have revelations, they don't see the error of their ways because their victim gave a good speech. Butters knows this. He's not trying to change her. He's not trying to save her. He's simply declaring his independence from the narrative she has written for him. He is refusing to let her define who he becomes. This scene works on multiple levels simultaneously. On the surface, it's a child standing up to his abuser in the most articulate and devastating way possible. Beneath that, it's a meditation on the relationship between power and time. The bully has power now. The bully controls the dynamic now. But time is on the victim's side. The bully will age. The bully will weaken. The bully will die. And the victim, if they can survive long enough, will outlast them. Butters' revenge isn't violence, it's longevity. It's the simple, stubborn act of continuing to exist and refusing to be defined by the worst things that happen to him. For a show that regularly puts its characters through outrageous physical comedy, Butterballs treats its subject matter with a restraint that borders on reverence. The bullying isn't funny. Butters' suffering isn't a setup for a punchline. His grandmother's cruelty isn't exaggerated to the point of absurdity. It's kept small and domestic and real, which makes it infinitely more disturbing than anything the show could achieve with its usual tools. A child being quietly tormented while his parents sit 3 feet away, oblivious, is scarier than any interdimensional monster or alien invasion the show has ever depicted. Because it's happening somewhere right now, to someone. What Butters does in that final scene is reject the framework entirely. He doesn't try to beat his grandmother at her own game. He doesn't escalate the violence or match her cruelty. He steps outside the cycle and speaks from a place of calm, terrible certainty about the future. He is telling her that she has already lost, not because he fought back, but because she is going to die, and he is going to be happy despite her. That's a form of victory that requires no physical strength at all. It requires only the ability to see beyond the present moment, which is exactly what being bullied makes it hardest to do. The connection between Raisins and Butterballs is worth drawing explicitly. In Raisins, Butters chooses to feel pain rather than go numb. In Butterballs, he takes that philosophy to its logical conclusion. The pain his grandmother causes him is not a reason to shut down, harden up, or become cruel in return. It's a temporary condition that he will outlast. The beautiful sadness he described in that parking lot outside Raisins is the same emotional orientation that allows him to walk into his grandmother's room and calmly describe her future. He can do this because he hasn't closed himself off. He hasn't turned bitter. He is still, despite everything, the kid who would rather be a crybaby than someone who stops feeling. If you're listening to this and starting to drift off, let Butters' quiet certainty carry you for a while. The idea that the worst things happening to you right now are temporary, that you will outlast them, that the people who hurt you will not define you. It's a simple idea. But sometimes simple is what you need at the end of a long day. Butters' resilience in Butterballs shows us what emotional courage looks like in a child who has every reason to give up. But there's another character in South Park whose emotional courage goes even deeper, because his kindness comes with no audience, no recognition, and no reward. He's been hidden behind an orange parka for the entire run of the show. He's the poorest kid in town. He dies more than anyone and is mourned less than anyone. And his most tender moments happen in the dark, when nobody is watching, between a boy and his little sister. Kenny McCormick's home life is, by a wide margin, the most depressing thing in South Park that is never really treated as depressing. His parents are neglectful. His father has held and lost more jobs than any character in the show's history. His family lives on the wrong side of the train tracks in a house that is visually distinct from every other house in South Park in that it looks like it's falling apart. The yard is a mess, the furniture is broken, his older brother Kevin is present but useless. His parents fight constantly, loudly, and sometimes violently. Kenny wears the same orange parka every single day, not as a fashion choice, but because it is very likely the only winter coat he owns. And yet, for the first 14 seasons of the show, Kenny's poverty and his family's dysfunction were played almost exclusively as background gags. A quick shot of his house to remind you he's poor. A muffled comment about not being able to afford lunch. A brief moment where his dad loses his temper and breaks something. The show never really invited you to sit with what Kenny's life was actually like. He was the funny one who died every week. His poverty was a characteristic, not a story. That changed in season 15, episode 14. The Poor Kid. And it changed again in season 19, episode 3. The City Part of Town. In these 2 episodes, separated by 4 years of real-world time, South Park finally looked at Kenny McCormick and saw not a gag, but a child who has been quietly suffering for the entire run of the show. And what it found, when it finally looked, was someone extraordinary. The Poor Kid opens with a live television show called White Trash in Trouble, broadcasting from the McCormick home. Kenny's parents are arrested on camera after the family's dysfunction is exposed on national television. And just like that, Kenny, his brother Kevin, and his little sister Karen are taken away by Child Protective Services and placed in foster care. The foster home is run by a couple who are, in the show's words, aggressively agnostic. They don't believe in anything, and they're very aggressive about it. They yell at the children about the unknowability of higher powers. They serve strange food. The house is cold and unfamiliar, and for the McCormick kids, especially little Karen, this is a nightmare. She's been ripped away from the only home she's ever known, bad as it was, and placed in the care of strangers who don't understand her or care about her needs. Karen is the youngest McCormick. She's small and scared and completely lost. At school, she gets bullied. At the foster home, she can't sleep. She cries at night in her bed, alone in a strange room, waiting for the one person she believes will come for her. And he does come. Kenny, as his superhero alter ego Mysterion, appears at Karen's window in the middle of the night. Mysterion was first introduced in South Park's Coon and Friends storyline, and his true identity as Kenny was revealed in season 14's Mysterion Rises. As Mysterion, Kenny wears a dark costume with a hood and a question mark on his forehead. He speaks in a deeper voice. He is, within the fiction the kids have created for themselves, a genuine superhero with actual powers. His power, as established in the Kun trilogy, is that he cannot die permanently. He returns every time, reborn, and no one remembers his previous deaths. It's a curse he carries alone. But when Mysterion appears at Karen's window, none of that mythology matters. What matters is what Karen says when she sees him. She calls him her guardian angel. She tells him she's been expecting him. She says he always comes when she's sad. That line, he always comes when she's sad. It implies a history. It implies that this isn't the first time Mysterion has visited Karen in the middle of the night. That this is something Kenny has been doing quietly, without anyone knowing, for who knows how long. Whenever his little sister is scared or hurt or crying, Kenny puts on his costume and shows up at her window to tell her everything is going to be okay. Mysterion doesn't fix Karen's problems. He doesn't fight the bullies or reform the foster parents or magically restore the family. He just sits with her. He tells her she's going to be okay. He tells her he'll always be there for her. And Karen, who has been abandoned by every adult system that was supposed to protect her, who has been ripped from her home and dropped into a house run by strangers, believes him. Because he has never let her down. He is the one constant in her life. The one person who always shows up. The emotional power of this scene comes from everything we know about Kenny that Karen doesn't. She doesn't know that Mysterion is her brother. She doesn't know that the boy who plays with her during the day and the figure who appears at her window at night are the same person. She doesn't know that Kenny has died dozens of times and come back every time, carrying the weight of 1,000 unremembered deaths, and that he uses the one thing his terrible curse gives him, the knowledge that he can endure anything to be strong for her. She just knows that when things are worst, someone comes. Season 19's The City Part of Town builds on this dynamic in a different but equally devastating way. The episode's main plot involves Randy Marsh's scheme to gentrify Kenny's neighborhood, which he dubs Sodo Izopa, short for south of downtown South Park. The idea is to turn the area around Kenny's home into a trendy arts district to attract a Whole Foods. The trendy shops and restaurants spring up around the McCormick House, which remains a dilapidated wreck surrounded by hip boutiques and farm-to-table cafes. The gentrification pushes customers away from City Walk, the local Chinese restaurant, and Kenny gets a job there to help make ends meet. What Kenny does with his earnings is what elevates this episode from social satire to something genuinely moving. He could spend the money on himself. God knows he deserves to. He is a child who owns nothing, who wears the same clothes every day, who goes without things that every other kid in his school takes for granted: a new coat, a video game, a pair of shoes that don't have holes in them. Any of these would be reasonable, understandable purchases for a kid who has gone without for his entire life. But Kenny doesn't buy anything for himself. He uses his earnings to buy his little sister Karen a doll. That's it, a doll. A small, simple, cheap toy for a little girl who doesn't have much. And it is, without exaggeration, one of the most emotionally powerful moments in the entire history of this show. Looper's ranking of the best Kenny moments describes it as one of the most emotional moments in the series, and they're right, because it crystallizes everything that Kenny McCormick is in a single action. He is the kid with the least who gives the most. He is the kid nobody pays attention to who pays attention to everyone. He is the kid who dies every week and never complains, who lives in poverty and never asks for pity, who watches his parents fall apart and never blames them. And when he gets the chance, the smallest possible chance, to make someone else's life a little better, he doesn't hesitate. He doesn't think about himself first. He buys Karen a doll. Kenny's relationship with Karen recontextualizes his entire character across 20-plus seasons of South Park. Before The Poor Kid and The City Part of Town, Kenny was the funny dead kid. After these episodes, he's something else entirely. He's the show's quiet moral center. Not in the way Stan is the moral center, by learning lessons and articulating the obvious conclusion at the end of each episode. Kenny is the moral center in the way that some people in real life are. They don't talk about their values. They live them. They don't make speeches about compassion. They just show up when someone needs them, do what needs to be done, and never ask for credit. There's a Reddit comment that gets cited whenever fans discuss Kenny and Karen. A user wrote, "My favorite thing about Kenny is how much he loves Karen. Kenny is one of the most multifaceted and complex characters in the entire series." That comment gets upvoted into the thousands every time it's posted because it captures something the show itself took 15 seasons to figure out. Kenny McCormick was never just a death gag. He was always a person. It just took the writers that long to let him be one. The guardian angel dynamic between Kenny and Karen also connects to something philosophically interesting about Kenny's immortality. In the Coon and Friends trilogy, Kenny reveals that his superpower, his curse, is that he cannot die permanently. He is reborn every time, remembers everything, and no one else retains any memory of his deaths. He describes this to the other kids in a moment of raw frustration. He says it hurts every time, every single time he dies, he feels all of it. And the worst part isn't the pain. The worst part is that nobody remembers. He goes to school the next day and everyone acts like nothing happened, even if they watched him die with their own eyes. This curse, which is played for horror and comedy in the Coon trilogy, takes on a different meaning when you consider his relationship with Karen. Kenny cannot die. He will always come back, which means he can always be there for his sister. No matter what happens to him, no matter how many times the universe kills him and brings him back, he will always be at that window. He will always be the guardian angel. His curse, the thing that causes him endless suffering, is also the thing that makes his promise to Karen unbreakable. He will always be there because he literally cannot stop existing. The universe won't let him. There's something comforting in that, even if the comfort is wrapped in something dark. The idea that the things that hurt us the most can also be the things that make us strongest for the people we love. Kenny's immortality is a burden he carries alone, but it's also the foundation of the safest promise anyone in South Park has ever made. He told Karen he'd always be there. And unlike every other promise on this show, this one is literally impossible to break. If you're settling deeper into wherever you are tonight, let Kenny's quiet devotion be the thing that stays with you. The image of a small boy in a dark costume sitting at his sister's window, telling her she's going to be okay. Not because the world is fair or safe or kind, but because he will be there every time, no matter what. Kenny's selfless love for Karen reminds us that the show's emotional power often comes from characters acting against type. From people doing things we don't expect from them in a show we don't expect tenderness from. And nowhere is that principle more painfully tested than when South Park had to say goodbye to a beloved character not because of a plot decision, but because a real person walked away from the show. And the goodbye they wrote was both a farewell and a tribute, a love letter wrapped in satire, which is the only kind of love letter Parker and Stone know how to write. Jerome Chef McElroy was South Park's first real adult character. He was there from the beginning. From the very first season in 1997, Chef was the one grown-up in town who actually talked to the boys like they were people. He was the lunch lady at South Park Elementary who happened to be a brilliant musician and a deeply kind man who had lived a wild and fascinating life. Voiced by Isaac Hayes, the legendary soul musician behind Shaft and dozens of other iconic songs, Chef brought a warmth and a gravity to the show that no other character could match. When the boys had questions about love, about death, about the confusing and terrifying experience of growing up, they went to Chef. And Chef, unlike every other adult in South Park, actually gave them answers that were useful. Chef's advice was often wildly inappropriate in nature. That was part of the joke. The boys would ask him about life, and he'd launch into a soul song about romance and relationships. His catchphrase, "Hello there, children," became one of the most recognizable greetings in television history. But underneath the comedy, there was always something genuine in the dynamic. Chef cared about these characters. He paid attention to them when their parents were too busy or too oblivious. He offered them wisdom, even if that wisdom was delivered through double entendres and soul music. In a town full of idiots and hypocrites, Chef was the one adult who had his head on straight. Isaac Hayes brought all of this to life. His voice, that deep, smooth, unmistakable baritone, gave Chef a presence that elevated every scene he was in. When Chef talked, you listened. When Chef sang, you felt it. Hayes wasn't just providing voiceover, he was building a character from the ground up. One who became beloved not just by the boys on the show, but by the audience watching at home. For 9 seasons, Chef was a fixture, a constant, a reassuring presence in a show that prided itself on being anything but reassuring. And then, in season 9, South Park aired an episode called Trapped in the Closet. The episode satirized Scientology. It depicted the inner workings of the religion in detail, including a segment explaining the church's belief system that was presented with a Chiron reading, "This is what Scientologists actually believe." It was vintage South Park. Fearless, irreverent, equal opportunity mockery of the kind the show had been doing to every other religion, political movement, and cultural institution for nearly a decade. But Isaac Hayes was a Scientologist. He had been for years, and Trapped in the Closet crossed a line for him that the show's treatment of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, Mormonism, and every other belief system apparently had not. Hayes left the show. In March of 2006, a statement from Hayes criticized South Park for its treatment of religious beliefs and announced his departure. The details are somewhat murky. There were reports that Hayes had suffered a stroke and that people in his entourage may have issued the statement on his behalf. But the result was the same. Chef was gone. The voice that had been part of South Park since the pilot would never record another line for the show. Parker and Stone were hurt. They were also angry. And being Parker and Stone, they processed both emotions the only way they knew how. They wrote an episode. Season 10, Episode 1, The Return of Chef. It aired on March 22, 2006. It was the first episode of the season and the first episode without Isaac Hayes in the recording booth. And it is. In the space of 22 minutes, a savage piece of satire, a genuine expression of grief, and one of the most bittersweet farewells in television history. The episode's premise is straightforward. Chef comes back to South Park after a long absence, but something is wrong with him. He's been brainwashed by a group called the Super Adventure Club, a sinister cult-like organization with deeply disturbing beliefs. The show is not subtle about what the Super Adventure Club represents. It's a thinly veiled stand-in for Scientology, and the brainwashing Chef has undergone is Parker and Stone's interpretation of what they believe happened to Isaac Hayes. Their friend, their collaborator, the man who brought Chef to life, was taken from them by an organization that reprogrammed his thinking until he could no longer be part of the show. Chef's dialogue in the episode is constructed from spliced-together audio clips from previous episodes. Because Hayes was no longer available to record, Parker and Stone had to piece together Chef's lines from existing material, which gives his speech a disjointed, unsettling quality. He sounds like himself, but not quite. The rhythm is off. The cadence doesn't match. It sounds like someone wearing a mask of Chef's voice. And that's exactly the point. The character standing in front of the boys looks like Chef and sounds almost like Chef, but it isn't really Chef anymore. The person they loved has been replaced by something that resembles him but lacks the soul that made him who he was. The boys try to rescue Chef from the Super Adventure Club. They try to reach the person they know is still inside the brainwashed shell. They appeal to his memories. They remind him of who he was before. They try everything they can think of to bring their friend back. And for a moment, it seems like it's working. Chef appears to break free. He starts to come back to himself. Then he dies. He falls off a bridge, and the show, being South Park, makes his death as over-the-top and absurd as possible. It's grotesque in a way that is clearly intentional. The manner of Chef's death is the show's way of ensuring that the character cannot be resurrected, cannot be recast, cannot be brought back in any form. This is final, this is goodbye. But the episode doesn't end with Chef's death. It ends with his funeral. And the funeral scene is where the satire falls away and something raw and honest takes its place. Kyle stands up to deliver a eulogy. And what he says is clearly, unmistakably, Parker and Stone speaking directly through their character to the audience and to Isaac Hayes himself. Kyle tells the townspeople that they shouldn't be mad at Chef. That Chef was their friend, and that the person who did those terrible things at the end wasn't the Chef they knew. He was the victim of the Super Adventure Club, which scrambled his brains and turned him into something he would never have been on his own. Kyle says they should remember Chef for who he was, not for who the Super Adventure Club turned him into. The subtext is transparent. Parker and Stone are saying, "We're not angry at Isaac. We're angry at Scientology. We loved our friend. Our friend was taken from us by an organization that changed who he was. And we want to remember him the way he was before that happened. We want to honor what he gave us over 9 years of making this show together, not the way it ended." The funeral scene is played completely straight. There are no jokes, no cutaway gags, no subversive twist that undermines the sincerity of the moment. Kyle is visibly sad, Stan is visibly sad, the whole town is mourning, and the audience watching at home is mourning too. Not just for a fictional character, but for the real man behind the voice, and for the collaboration that ended before anyone was ready for it to end. What makes The Return of Chef so emotionally complex is that it manages to be both an act of revenge and an act of love at the same time. The Super Adventure Club satire is pointed and angry. The brainwashing metaphor is a direct accusation. Parker and Stone are not being subtle about their feelings toward Scientology or their belief that the organization was responsible for taking their friend away. But the funeral, the final moment of the episode, transcends the anger. It arrives at a place of genuine grief and gratitude. We lost our friend, the episode says, but we had him for 9 years. And those 9 years were extraordinary. Chef never came back. The show has occasionally referenced him in the years since, but the character has never been recast or resurrected. He remains absent, which is itself a kind of tribute. Other shows might have found a new voice actor and moved on. Parker and Stone decided that Chef was Isaac Hayes and nobody else. If they couldn't have Hayes, they wouldn't have Chef. The empty space where Chef used to be is a memorial to the partnership that made the character possible. Isaac Hayes passed away on August 10, 2008, 2 years after leaving the show. He was 65 years old. The circumstances of his departure from South Park remain a point of debate among fans. Some believe Hayes genuinely objected to the Scientology satire on principle. Others believe his stroke, which occurred in late 2005 or early 2006, left him impaired and that people close to him, people connected to the Church of Scientology, issued the departure statement on his behalf. Parker and Stone have suggested the latter in interviews, and there's a tenderness in that interpretation. The idea that their friend didn't choose to leave, that the decision was made for him, that the real Isaac Hayes would have stayed. Regardless of the circumstances, what The Return of Chef demonstrates is that South Park, a show that treats almost nothing as sacred, treats its own relationships with genuine reverence. Parker and Stone's bond with Hayes was real. Their grief at losing him was real, and they processed that grief the only way they knew how, by writing an episode that was simultaneously the most vicious takedown of Scientology they could imagine and the most heartfelt goodbye they could manage. Chef's farewell scene carries an extra layer of poignancy when you remember what he meant to the boys on the show. He was the person they went to when no one else would listen. He was the adult who treated them with respect when every other adult in South Park was too stupid, too selfish, or too insane to pay attention. Losing Chef meant losing the one adult in town who actually cared. And the show never replaced him. No other character stepped into that role. The boys had to grow up without their one reliable adult ally, which in a way mirrors the experience of growing up itself. The people who guide you through childhood don't always make it to the other side with you. Sometimes they leave, sometimes they're taken, and you have to figure out how to keep going without them. If Chef's departure was about mourning the loss of something real, then the next story we need to explore is about gaining something nobody expected. It's the story of two background characters who were pushed into a relationship as a joke and somehow became the most sincere love story South Park has ever told. It's a story that shouldn't work, it shouldn't be sweet, it shouldn't make you feel anything at all. And yet it does, because South Park, for all its chaos and cruelty, keeps finding ways to surprise you with how much heart it has when you least expect it. Before we get into this next episode, a bit of context is needed about two characters you've probably barely noticed if you're a casual South Park viewer. Tweak and Craig Tucker are background kids. They've been in the show since the early seasons, but they were never main characters. They were set dressing, part of the broader classroom. Tweak is the perpetually anxious, twitching kid whose parents own a coffee shop and feed him espresso, which is almost certainly the source of his anxiety. Craig is the stoic, deadpan kid who is best known for flipping people off. That's basically his entire personality. Someone says something, Craig flips them off. These are not characters anyone was paying particularly close attention to. And that's exactly why what happened next was so surprising. Season 19, Episode 6, Tweak x Craig. This episode aired during one of South Park's most ambitious seasons, the PC Principal era, where the show experimented with full serialization and ongoing storylines about political correctness, gentrification, and the internet's influence on culture. Season 19's first episode, Stunning and Brave, introduced P.C. Principal as the new authority figure at South Park Elementary, a jacked fraternity bro who enforced progressive values through intimidation and physical violence. The season was building towards something. Every episode was connected. And into that connected, politically charged season, Parker and Stone dropped an episode about two fourth-grade boys being told they're in a love story. The setup goes like this. A group of Asian girls at South Park Elementary have started creating yaoi artwork depicting Tweek and Craig as a romantic couple. Yaoi is a genre of fan art and manga, primarily created by and for women, that depicts romantic relationships between male characters. The Asian students' artwork shows Tweek and Craig holding hands, embracing, gazing into each other's eyes. The art spreads around the school, then it spreads around the town, and suddenly everyone in South Park is talking about Tweek and Craig's relationship. The joke initially is that there is no relationship. Tweek and Craig are confused and horrified. They're not a couple. They've never been a couple. They barely interact with each other. But the town, in its eagerness to be progressive and supportive, refuses to listen. People congratulate them. Adults tell them how brave they are. The school celebrates their love. P.C. Principal stands behind them with barely contained tears of pride. The Asian girl's artwork has created a reality that doesn't exist, and the town's desperate need to be seen as accepting has made it impossible for Tweek and Craig to deny it. This is sharp satire of multiple things simultaneously. It's mocking shipping culture, the fan practice of imagining romantic relationships between characters regardless of what the source material actually depicts. It's mocking performative progressivism, the phenomenon of people supporting something not because they genuinely care, but because supporting it makes them look good. It's mocking the erasure of individual agency, the way communities can project identities onto people and then refuse to let those people contradict the projection. But then something unexpected happens. The episode starts to take the relationship seriously. Under the pressure of the town's expectations, Tweek and Craig are forced to spend time together. They have to act like a couple because everyone already believes they are one. And somewhere in the process of performing a relationship, something real begins to emerge. They start to understand each other. They start to rely on each other. They start to develop a bond that, while it may have begun as fiction, gradually becomes genuine. There's a scene in the episode where Tweek and Craig stage a breakup to get the town off their backs. They stand in front of the school and announce that they're splitting up. And the town's reaction is extraordinary. People weep. The mayor is shown crying at her husband's grave, devastated by the news. A montage plays, set to the song Say Something by A Great Big World, showing the entire community reacting to the breakup of two fourth-grade boys as if it were the end of a great love story. The scene is hilarious because of the absurd disproportion between the event and the reaction. Two 9-year-olds who were never actually dating pretend to break up, and the entire town goes into mourning. But underneath the humor, there's something else happening. The show is acknowledging that the relationship has taken on a reality of its own. Whether or not Tweek and Craig started as a couple, the community's investment in their relationship, the Asian girl's artwork, the shared experiences they've had together, have created something that feels real to the people around them. And maybe, the episode suggests, it feels real to Tweek and Craig too. By the end of the episode, Tweek and Craig are together. For real, not as a joke, not as a performance. They choose each other. And the show commits to it. This isn't a one-episode gag. Tweek and Craig remain a couple for the rest of the series. They appear together in subsequent episodes. They are depicted as a normal, functional, caring partnership. In the COVID special set 40 years in the future, Tweek and Craig are still together. They attend Kenny's funeral as a couple. They have built a life together. The joke became a story, became a real thing, and Parker and Stone let it be a real thing. What makes this remarkable is the context. South Park is a show that has been accused of insensitivity on almost every social topic imaginable. It has mocked gay characters, it has used homophobic language, it has treated homosexuality as a punchline on numerous occasions. And yet, somehow, through the alchemy of good writing and genuine creative instinct, it produced one of the most organic and sincere depictions of a same-sex relationship in all of animation. Parker and Stone didn't set out to create a gay love story. They set out to make fun of yaoi fan art and performative progressivism. But somewhere along the way, the characters took over. Tweek and Craig clicked in a way that surprised even their creators. The chemistry worked. The dynamic felt honest, and rather than retreating to the safety of the joke, rather than breaking the couple up and resetting the status quo the way the show does with almost everything else, Parker and Stone leaned into it. They let Tweek and Craig be together. They let the relationship matter. Slash Film, in their ranking of the best South Park episodes, called Tweek x Craig both a heartfelt coming-out storyline and a deeply sarcastic skewering of shipping culture gone too far. And that dual identity is exactly what makes it work. The episode never stops being funny, it never stops being satirical, but it also never stops being genuinely sweet. The sincerity and the satire coexist in perfect balance, each making the other stronger. You laugh at the absurdity of the situation and then find yourself unexpectedly moved by the tenderness of it. One detail that elevates the episode from great to extraordinary is that Parker and Stone incorporated actual yaoi fan art created by real South Park fans into the episode itself. The drawings you see on screen, the artwork the Asian girls produce, are genuine pieces of fan art that existed in the South Park fan community before the episode was written. This is the show acknowledging its own fandom, reaching into the creative space that fans have built, and pulling something beautiful out of it. The relationship that fans imagined into existence became canon. The fictional became real. The dream became the story. Tweek and Craig's relationship has endured through every tonal shift and narrative experiment the show has undergone since season 19. Through the heavily serialized seasons, through the COVID specials, through the show's various resets and reinventions. No matter what changes, Tweek and Craig remain together. They are, by a comfortable margin, the most stable and healthy relationship on the show. They outlast Stan and Wendy, who break up and get back together and break up again across 2 decades. They outlast Randy and Sharon, whose marriage is constantly on the verge of collapse. They even outlast the show's commitment to its own cynicism. Because every time South Park suggests that love is stupid or relationships are doomed, Tweek and Craig are right there, quietly proving otherwise. There's a specific sweetness to love stories that begin accidentally, relationships that weren't planned or sought out but simply happened because 2 people were put in proximity and discovered they complemented each other. Tweek's anxiety is soothed by Craig's calm. Craig's emotional blankness is warmed by Tweek's intensity. They balance each other in a way that feels natural and inevitable, even though the circumstances that brought them together were anything but. For the sleep audience tonight, the Tweek and Craig story carries a particular kind of comfort. The idea that love can find you even when you're not looking for it. That the relationships that define your life might not be the ones you planned or expected. That sometimes the people you need most are the ones the universe puts in front of you for reasons that don't make any sense at first but make perfect sense later. Tweek and Craig didn't choose each other because of some grand romantic gesture. They chose each other because they were standing next to each other when the world decided they belonged together. And then they stayed, through everything. They just stayed. That idea, the simple, stubborn act of staying, connects to everything we've talked about tonight. Kenny stays for Karen, appearing at her window every time she needs him. Butters stays open to the world despite every reason to close himself off. Stan stays alive even when the world turns gray and nothing brings him joy. Chef's friends stay loyal to his memory even after he's taken from them. And Tweek and Craig stay together, a quiet, constant, unbreakable thing in a world that breaks everything else. South Park has been on the air for nearly 3 decades now. It has outlasted cultural movements, political administrations, entire generations of viewers. It has survived being banned, censored, protested, and written off as vulgar trash more times than anyone can count. And through all of that, it has kept coming back to these moments, these unexpected wells of tenderness that appear between the profanity and the chaos. These scenes where the show sets aside everything it's known for and simply tells you the truth about what it means to be human. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what all of these episodes taken together reveal about the real heart of South Park, and about what this show, of all shows, has to teach us about the things that actually matter. When you step back and look at all of these episodes together, a pattern emerges that tells you something important about how South Park operates emotionally. And it's a pattern that explains why these moments hit so much harder than similar moments in shows that are actually designed to make you feel things. The principle is contrast, and it's deceptively simple. When a drama makes you cry, you are prepared for it. You sat down to watch something serious. Your emotional defenses were calibrated for sincerity. The show had set expectations through its marketing, its tone, its genre, that it was going to ask something of you emotionally, and you consented to that when you pressed play. The tears, when they come, are expected. They're part of the transaction. South Park doesn't work that way. When South Park makes you cry, you weren't prepared at all. You sat down for a show about foul-mouthed children in Colorado. Your defenses were set to comedy. You were expecting to laugh, and then, without warning, the show reaches through the noise and the profanity and the toilet humor and touches something real inside you. You didn't consent to that. You didn't sign up for it. And because you weren't braced, because you had no defenses up, the emotion lands with the force of an ambush. It gets past every wall you've built. It gets past your cynicism and your ironic distance and your I don't cry at cartoons resistance. And by the time you realize what's happening, it's too late. You're already feeling it. This is why Butter's beautiful sadness speech hits harder than 100 dramatic monologues in prestige television. This is why Stan lying alone on his bed while Landslide plays hits harder than any carefully scored emotional climax in a show that's supposed to be emotional. This is why Kenny buying Karen a doll devastates people who watch multi-million-dollar tear-jerkers without shedding a single drop. The context matters. Where the emotion comes from matters as much as what the emotion is. There are other episodes we haven't talked about tonight that follow this same pattern. Moments scattered across the show's 28 seasons that catch you off guard with their sincerity. There's Stanley's Cup, Season 10, Episode 14, where Stan is forced to coach a pee-wee hockey team after his bike gets towed. One of the kids on the team, a boy named Nelson Brown, has cancer. He's dying, and the voice actor who played Nelson delivered his lines with such genuine, understated sorrow that critics noted it sounded like the actor didn't know he was performing in a comedy. Nelson asks Stan one thing: just win the next game. That's all he wants, just one victory before he dies. The episode subverts every inspirational sports movie trope you've ever seen by having the team lose spectacularly. Nelson's condition worsens. There is no underdog triumph. There is no miracle comeback. The show takes the feel-good formula and guts it, leaving you with the raw, uncomfortable truth that sometimes the good guys lose, and sometimes sick kids don't get better, and sometimes the universe doesn't care about narrative satisfaction. It's cruel. It's also honest. There's Cash for Gold, Season 16, Episode 2, where Stan's grandfather, who has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, buys an expensive piece of jewelry from a home shopping network show, thinking it's a gift for someone he loves. His forgetfulness has been played for mild laughs in earlier seasons. He calls Stan Billy. He thinks Shelley is still a baby. But in this episode, the Alzheimer's becomes something heavier. Stan's grandfather sits in his chair and starts talking about a dog he once had, a dog named Patches, and how he loved that dog more than anything, and how he can't remember what Patches looked like anymore. He can feel the love. He knows the love was real. But the specifics, the details, the face of the thing he loved have dissolved into fog. And he is sitting there, lost in the fog, trying to grab hold of something that keeps slipping away. That scene is brutal. It's brutal because Alzheimer's is brutal. Because watching someone you love forget the things and people that made their life meaningful is one of the worst experiences a family can go through. In South Park, a show where Stan's grandfather once repeatedly tried to get Stan to kill him as a running gag, suddenly decides to take this disease seriously, to let the weight of it sit in the room, to let an old man struggle with his failing memory and not make a joke out of it. There's The Hobbit, Season 17, Episode 10, where Wendy Testaberger tries to fight against the epidemic of young girls photoshopping their pictures to look impossibly beautiful. Wendy is one of the few wholly good characters in South Park. She's smart, she's principled, she stands up for what's right even when it's not popular. And in this episode, she sees her classmates warping their own images, creating digital versions of themselves that conform to impossible beauty standards. And she tries to tell them that it's wrong, that they're hurting themselves, that real bodies are not the same as filtered pictures. Nobody listens, the boys don't care. The girls think Wendy is just jealous. The trend gets worse. More and more girls Photoshop their pictures. Stan asks Wendy to Photoshop her own picture so he doesn't look bad for having a less attractive girlfriend. The episode ends with Wendy, alone in her room, giving in. She Photoshops her own picture. She sends it out. She surrenders to the thing she was fighting against because the pressure was too much and nobody was willing to stand with her. That ending is devastating because it's a capitulation. Wendy doesn't lose to a villain. She doesn't get defeated in a dramatic confrontation. She simply gets worn down by the collective indifference of everyone around her. She compromises her own values, not because she stopped believing in them, but because holding on to them alone was too exhausting. And that's a form of tragedy that happens every single day to real people, especially to young women who try to push back against the culture's obsession with physical appearance and are told over and over and over that their resistance doesn't matter and they should just go along with it. These additional episodes share something fundamental with the ones we've explored in more depth tonight. They all involve a character being honest in a world that doesn't want honesty. Nelson being honest about wanting to win one game before he dies. Stan's grandfather being honest about losing his memories. Wendy being honest about beauty standards. Butters being honest about sadness. Kenny being honest about his devotion to his sister. Stan being honest about his depression. The honesty is what makes these moments heartfelt, not the circumstances, not the plot mechanics. The simple, difficult act of a character saying what is true when saying what is true is the hardest thing you can do. Parker and Stone create these episodes under extraordinary constraints. Every episode of South Park is produced in approximately 6 days. 6 days from concept to finished animation. That's not a euphemism or an exaggeration. It's been documented in the 2011 documentary 6 Days to Air. While most animated shows take months to produce a single episode, Parker and Stone write, voice, animate, and deliver a finished product in less than a week. This breakneck schedule is what allows the show to comment on current events with a speed that no other animated series can match. But it also means that the emotional moments aren't workshopped or focus grouped or polished through dozens of rewrites. They come from instinct, from whatever Parker and Stone are feeling in that particular week. There's something important about that. The emotional honesty of South Park's best episodes isn't the product of careful calculation. It's the product of two guys sitting in a room at 3 a.m, exhausted, trying to finish a script by deadline, and writing something true because they don't have time to write something safe. The beautiful sadness speech came from that process. The landslide montage came from that process. Kenny buying Karen a doll came from that process. These moments weren't designed to go viral or win Emmys. They were born in the chaos of creation, under pressure, in the dark hours when the only thing you have left to offer is honesty. This matters because it connects to why these moments feel so different from emotional beats in other shows. When a drama carefully engineers a tear-jerker moment, you can feel the machinery. You can sense the writers positioning the emotional dominoes. You can see the score building, the cinematography shifting. The pacing slowing down to give you time to start feeling before the big moment arrives. It's effective, but it's a performance. South Park's emotional moments don't feel like performances. They feel like accidents, like someone tripped and fell and landed on something beautiful. And that lack of polish, that roughness, that sense of something genuine happening in real time is what makes them stick. The show is currently in its 28th season. In July of 2025, Parker and Stone signed a $1.5 billion deal with Paramount Global guaranteeing 50 new episodes, which means the show is secured through at least 2029 or 2030. That's 30-plus years of South Park. 30-plus years of 4 kids in Colorado processing the world's insanity through profanity and paper cutout animation. And in all those years, across all those episodes, the show has never lost its capacity to surprise you with a moment of tenderness when you least expect it. The emotional episodes aren't getting less frequent as the show ages. If anything, they're getting more honest. The COVID specials depicted the boys as adults 40 years in the future, grieving the death of Kenny McCormick, and the grief felt real. The passage of time, the way the characters had grown apart, the weight of decades of missed connections and unspoken feelings, all of it resonated because the show treated it with the same sincerity it brought to Kenny Dies 20 years earlier. What ties all of these episodes together, what makes them more than just isolated moments of sentiment in an otherwise irreverent show, is their shared understanding of a single idea. And that idea is this: vulnerability is not weakness. Feeling things deeply is not a flaw. The capacity to be hurt by the world is the same capacity that allows you to be moved by it, to love within it, to find meaning despite its chaos and cruelty. Every heartfelt moment in South Park is, at its core, a defense of vulnerability in a show that ostensibly celebrates the opposite. Think about what South Park is known for: Cartman's sociopathy, Randy's recklessness, the town's collective stupidity. The show rewards cynicism, detachment, and the ability to laugh at suffering rather than be destroyed by it. Its default mode is irreverence. Its currency is shock. To be emotionally affected by anything in South Park is, in a sense, to be the butt of the joke. The show is designed to toughen you up, to make you laugh at things that should upset you, to erode the boundaries between acceptable and unacceptable through sheer repetition of the outrageous. And yet, the characters who carry the show's emotional weight, who deliver its most memorable and beloved moments, are not the cynical ones. They're not Cartman, who feels nothing. They're not Randy, who processes everything through absurdity. They're not Craig, who flips off every situation he encounters. The emotional anchors of South Park are the vulnerable ones: Butters, who feels everything and refuses to stop; Kenny, who suffers in silence and gives anyway; Stan, who tries to care even when the world makes caring painful. These are the characters who make the show worth watching. Not because they're funny, although they are, but because they're human. Because they remind you that underneath all the profanity and the shock and the satirical armor, there are real feelings, real connections, real cost to being alive. Butters' philosophy, the beautiful sadness, is the show's true thesis statement. More than any of Cartman's schemes or Randy's disasters or the town's collective hysteria, Butters' belief that feeling pain is evidence of having felt joy is the closest thing South Park has to a moral center. And it's telling that this thesis comes from the character the show treats worst. Butters gets grounded for things that aren't his fault. He gets manipulated by Cartman into schemes that cause him harm. His parents are, at best, incompetent and, at worst, abusive. He has been abandoned, betrayed, mocked, and mistreated across hundreds of episodes. By any reasonable measure, Butters should be the most bitter, cynical character on the show. He has earned the right to hate the world. But he doesn't. He remains open. He remains hopeful. He remains willing to be hurt. Because being hurt is the price of being alive. And being alive, to Butters, is always worth it. This isn't naivety. Naivety is ignorance of how the world works. Butters knows how the world works. He's experienced its cruelty firsthand, repeatedly, in ways that would break most people. His optimism isn't born from ignorance. It's born from a conscious choice to remain open despite knowing exactly how much that openness will cost him. This is a profoundly radical philosophical position, especially coming from a show like South Park. In a cultural moment that prizes ironic detachment, emotional armor, and the performance of not caring, Butters stands as a quietly revolutionary figure. He is earnest in an age of irony. He is vulnerable in a culture of self-protection. He is kind in a world that interprets kindness as weakness. And the show, despite everything, treats his position with respect. It never punishes Butters for being open. Oh, it makes him suffer constantly. But it never suggests that his suffering is a consequence of his philosophy. He suffers because the world is full of suffering. His philosophy is how he survives it. There's a parallel here to the show itself. South Park has survived for nearly 30 years in an entertainment landscape that has chewed up and spit out hundreds of other shows. It's survived cancel culture, changing tastes, corporate mergers, streaming wars, and the general acceleration of cultural attention spans that makes anything lasting more than a few seasons feel like a miracle. And the reason it survived, the reason people keep coming back to it, is not the shock value. Shock value has a shelf life. You can only be outraged so many times before outrage becomes boring. The reason South Park endures is the heart. The moments we've talked about tonight, the times when the show reaches through its own armor and touches something true. Those are the episodes people remember. Those are the moments that get shared, quoted, tattooed on skin, referenced in therapy sessions. People don't share clips of Cartman being cruel. They share clips of Butters talking about beautiful sadness. They share clips of Kenny appearing at Karen's window. They share the landslide montage and Kyle's eulogy for Chef and Tweak and Craig choosing each other. The shock gets people through the door. The heart is what makes them stay. Parker and Stone have never been particularly comfortable talking about the emotional dimension of their show. In interviews, they tend to deflect with humor when asked about the deeper themes. They present themselves as guys who just think stuff is funny and want to make each other laugh. And maybe that's true on a surface level, but the evidence of 28 seasons says otherwise. You don't write Butter's beautiful sadness speech by accident. You don't craft the landslide montage without understanding exactly what you're doing. You don't commit to Tweak and Craig's relationship across multiple seasons unless part of you believes in what that relationship represents. Parker and Stone may not frame themselves as emotional storytellers, but their work tells a different story. Their work says that they care deeply about the characters they've created, that they understand the weight of what these characters carry, and that when the moment calls for sincerity, they are capable of producing work that stands alongside the best emotional storytelling in any medium. The show's production process reinforces this. 6 days. That's all they have. 6 days to go from blank page to finished episode. And in those 6 days, under that pressure, the emotional episodes emerged not from careful planning, but from raw creative instinct. Parker has talked about the experience of writing late at night, of being so tired that the defenses drop and something honest comes through. The exhaustion strips away the ironic distance. It removes the safety net of satire. And what's left sometimes is something real, something that wasn't planned, something that surprises even the people who made it. That's what art is supposed to do. Not always, not every time. But sometimes art is supposed to catch its creators off guard, to reveal things they didn't know they were feeling, to say things they didn't know they needed to say. South Park's heartfelt episodes feel like discoveries, like Parker and Stone stumbled into a room they didn't know was in their house. And when they turned on the light, they found something beautiful. They couldn't have planned it. They couldn't have engineered it. It emerged because the conditions were right. Exhaustion, deadline pressure, a deep familiarity with characters they've been living with for decades, and the trust that the audience would follow them wherever they went, even into sincerity, and the audience has followed every time. The response to these episodes is overwhelming and consistent across the decades. Fans who have watched the show since 1997, who grew up with Stan and Kyle and Cartman and Kenny, who have seen every controversy and every offensive joke and every boundary pushed and crossed, these fans will tell you without hesitation that the heartfelt episodes are the best ones. Not the funniest, not the most shocking, the best, because those are the episodes that justify everything else. They're the reason the show matters. They're the proof that underneath the cartoon about foul-mouthed kids, there's a real, beating, sometimes breaking heart. Let's bring this back to tonight. To you, wherever you are, settling in for the night. There's a reason these stories work as sleep content, and it's not just because the narration is long and the tone is warm. It's because the themes themselves are soothing in a way that might not be obvious at first. Think about what we've talked about. Kenny dies, and his friends grieve for real. Stan's world falls apart, and he lies alone in a new room, and the credits roll in silence. Butters gets his heart broken and calls it beautiful. A grandmother bullies a child, and the child tells her she's already lost. Kenny appears at his sister's window and promises to always be there. A community mourns a character who was taken from them by something they couldn't control. Two boys who never planned on falling in love choose each other and stay. Every one of these stories is, at its core, about the same thing. The fundamental, irreducible, unshakable fact that caring about things is hard. And it hurts, and it costs you, and it's worth it anyway. That's the thread running through all of them. That's the lesson South Park keeps returning to. Episode after episode, decade after decade, beneath all the profanity and the satire and the carefully maintained illusion that nothing matters and everything is a joke. Something matters, something always matters, and the proof is in the tears. Yours, the characters. Parker and Stone's, whether they'd admit it or not. Butters said it best. He said he was sad, but he was happy that something could make him feel that sad, because it meant he'd felt something really good before. And that's the note to fall asleep on tonight. Not the sadness, the something good that came before it. The friendship that made the loss meaningful, the love that made the breakup devastating. the connection that made the goodbye impossible. South Park has been telling us this for almost 30 years. It just uses fart jokes and profanity to get there, which means most people don't realize they're being told something beautiful until they're already feeling it. That's the trick. That's the magic of a show that shouldn't be able to make you cry but does it anyway. So close your eyes. Let the stories we've walked through tonight settle into the background of your mind. Kenny at the window, Butters in the rain, Stan on the bed, Fleetwood Mac on the soundtrack. The credits rolling in silence. These images have stayed with millions of people for years because they capture something true about the human experience. The experience of feeling deeply in a world that often punishes you for it. The experience of remaining open when every instinct tells you to close. The experience of loving people who might leave, who might be taken, who might not love you back, and choosing to love them anyway because the alternative, the numbness, the cynicism, the armor is worse. That's what South Park, of all things, understands. That the worst thing in the world isn't getting hurt. The worst thing in the world is not being able to feel anything at all. The show is going to keep going. 50 more episodes guaranteed, stretching at least through 2029 or 2030. There will be more offensive jokes, more controversies, more moments that make headlines for the wrong reasons. And scattered among all of that, there will be more of these. More quiet, unexpected, devastatingly sincere moments, where a show about 4 kids in Colorado says something so honest about the human condition that it catches you off guard and makes you feel something you weren't prepared to feel. If you're still awake, that's okay. Let the silence fill the space. Let the stories breathe. And if you're already drifting, let this be the last thing that registers before sleep takes over. Somewhere in South Park, Colorado, a kid in an orange parka is sitting at his sister's window, telling her everything is going to be okay. And he means it. And he'll be there tomorrow too. And the day after that, and the day after that. Because some promises, even in a show where nothing is sacred, are meant to be kept. Good night, rest well, and remember what Butters said. The sadness you carry is proof that something beautiful happened. Don't be afraid of it. It just means you're alive. Actually, before we let the silence take over completely, there are a few more stories worth sitting with tonight. Episodes and moments that didn't quite fit into the main arc we've been tracing, but that deserve their place in this conversation. Think of these as the bonus tracks, the deep cuts, the moments that longtime fans carry with them even if they never made it onto anyone's official top 10 list. Let's start with something that happened all the way back in Season 4. Cherokee Hair Tampons, Episode 6. Kyle Broflovsky needs a kidney transplant. His kidneys are failing. The doctors tell him he needs a donor or he's going to die. This is played for the most part as a vehicle for the episode's satire of New Age medicine. Kyle's mother, Sheila, desperate and scared, turns to alternative healing. She goes to a store run by a woman called Misinformation and starts buying crystals and holistic remedies and every piece of snake oil she can get her hands on, because she's a mother and her child is dying and she'll try anything. But while the adults are flailing, Stan does something simple. He goes to the doctor and says he wants to give Kyle his kidney. The doctor explains that this is a serious surgery, that it will hurt, that there are risks. And Stan, who is 9 years old, says, "I'll give Kyle my kidney, even if it hurts a whole lot. I don't care." That line doesn't get quoted as often as Butters' beautiful sadness speech. It doesn't show up on lists of the show's greatest moments as frequently as the landslide montage. But it might be the purest expression of friendship in the entire series. There's no philosophical framework behind it. No elaborate emotional processing. Just a kid saying with absolute clarity that he would endure pain to save his best friend and that the pain doesn't matter. 9-year-olds shouldn't have to make decisions like that. But Stan doesn't hesitate. He doesn't weigh the costs. He hears that Kyle needs a kidney and his immediate, instinctive response is to offer his own. That's love, not romantic love, not the complicated, conditional, negotiated kind of love that adults specialize in. Just the simple, ferocious, I will give you a piece of my body if it means you survive kind of love that children are sometimes capable of and that adults spend their entire lives trying to get back to. Then there's Timmy and Gobbles, Season 4, Episode 13, Helen Keller the Musical. The boys are putting together a Thanksgiving play about Helen Keller, and Timmy, the wheelchair-bound kid who can only say his own name, develops a bond with a disabled turkey he names Gobbles. The turkey is crippled. It can barely walk. It's not the impressive show turkey the other kids wanted for their production, but Timmy loves it. He insists Gobbles be in the play. The other kids tell Timmy that Gobbles isn't good enough. They want a turkey that can do tricks, that looks impressive, that will make their play a success. Timmy is told that Gobbles will be sent to an animal shelter where it will be used for experiments. This is a lie designed to get Timmy to give up the turkey, but Timmy believes it. And the scene where Timmy has to say goodbye to Gobbles, where he tries to send the turkey away for its own good, is genuinely heartbreaking. Gobbles looks back at Timmy. Timmy looks at Gobbles. Neither of them can really communicate, not in the way the world expects. Timmy can only say his name. Gobbles is a turkey. But there's a connection between them that transcends language. Two beings who the world sees as broken, as less than, as not good enough, finding each other and refusing to let go. Timmy eventually gets Gobbles back. The turkey performs in the play. The audience loves it. But the emotional weight of the episode isn't in the resolution. It's in that moment of separation. That moment where Timmy has to choose between what the world is telling him to do and what his heart is telling him to do. The world says Gobbles isn't good enough. Timmy's heart says Gobbles is perfect. And Timmy, who can barely speak, who is constantly underestimated, who is one of the most marginalized characters on the show, makes the brave choice. He chooses loyalty over practicality. He chooses love over approval. He chooses his broken, limping, imperfect turkey over the shiny, performing, crowd-pleasing alternative. That's a Butters-level emotional move, by the way. It comes from the same place. The willingness to hold on to something imperfect because the connection is real, even when the world is telling you to trade up. And then there's a moment that's often overlooked, but that hits differently the older you get. Season 9, Episode 3, Wing. This isn't an emotional episode in the traditional sense, but there's a thread in the background of Seasons 8 and 9 involving Kyle's little brother Ike, who was adopted from Canada. In Season 7's It's Christmas in Canada, a new Canadian Prime Minister demands that all Canadian-born Americans be returned to Canada, and Ike is taken away from the Broflovsky family. The scene where Ike has to leave his family is played with more sincerity than you'd expect from a South Park Christmas special. Sheila and Gerald are devastated. Kyle is furious. The family gathers at the airport to say goodbye to this tiny, football-shaped Canadian toddler who has become an indispensable part of their lives. And then Kyle, who is 9 years old, decides to walk to Canada to get his brother back. He recruits Stan, Cartman, and Kenny for the journey. They walk through a Wizard of Oz parody, crossing the entirety of Canada on foot, encountering bizarre obstacles and strange characters, all because Kyle refuses to accept that his brother's gone. The thing about Kyle and Ike is that their bond shouldn't be as strong as it is. Ike is adopted. He's Canadian. He's a toddler who can barely contribute to conversations. Kyle has every reason to treat Ike the way Cartman treats everyone, as an annoyance, an obstacle, someone else's problem. But he doesn't. Kyle loves Ike with a fierceness that defines him as a character. He loves his brother so much that he'll walk across an entire country to bring him home. And when they finally reunite at the end of the episode, the moment is warm and genuine and earned. Sibling love doesn't get explored very often in South Park. The show is more interested in friendships and parent-child dynamics. But when it does explore it through Kyle and Ike, through Kenny and Karen, through even the fractured relationship between Stan and Shelley, it finds something that the show's more cynical storytelling can't touch. The idea that the people you're stuck with, the ones you didn't choose, the ones who were just there when you were born or adopted into the family, can become the people you love the most fiercely, not because they earned it, not because they're impressive or useful or entertaining, but because they're yours, their family. And that word, which the show's adults treat as a burden or a joke, means something different to the kids. To the kids, family is the thing you walk across Canada for. It's the thing you put on a costume and sit at a window for. It's the thing you offer your kidney for without thinking twice. There's one more moment worth sitting with, and it comes from a place you'd never expect. Season 9's Trapped in the Closet, the Scientology episode that cost the show Isaac Hayes, contains a tiny moment of genuine sweetness that gets lost in the controversy. Early in the episode, Stan is identified by Scientology leaders as the reincarnation of L. Ron Hubbard. Thousands of Scientologists flock to South Park to be near their returned leader. And in the chaos, Stan just wants things to go back to normal. He wants to play with his friends. He wants to be a kid. He doesn't want to be a messiah or a leader or a symbol. He just wants to be Stan. That desire to just be a normal kid in a world that keeps dragging you into insane situations is the emotional undercurrent of the entire series. All four boys, Stan, Kyle, Cartman, and Kenny, are perpetually caught between childhood and the adult world's dysfunction. They're dragged into wars, cults, political crises, interdimensional adventures, and cultural upheavals. They're forced to process things that no child should have to process. And through it all, what they want most is just to hang out, to play video games, to throw a football in the yard, to be kids for as long as they can before the world makes that impossible. South Park, at its most heartfelt, is a show about the last days of childhood, about the tiny window of time when the world is still comprehensible and your friends are still close, and the biggest problems in your life are school dances and football games and whether your mom will let you stay up late. The heartfelt episodes we've talked about tonight are the episodes where that window starts to close, where the kids glimpse the adult world's capacity for loss, for cruelty, for indifference, and have to decide how to respond. Kenny responds with selflessness. Butters responds with openness. Stan responds with grief. Kyle responds with loyalty. And the show, through all of them, says the same thing. Hold on to what matters. Feel what you feel. Don't let the world make you numb, and if you can't stop the window from closing, at least look through it while you still can. The night is getting late. The stories have done their work, and wherever you are right now, whatever kind of day you had, whatever worries are circling in the back of your mind, waiting for you to pay attention to them, let them go for now. They'll be there in the morning. They always are. But right now, in this moment, you're allowed to rest. You're allowed to stop processing and analyzing and worrying and just be still. Think about Butters in the rain, not the sadness on his face. Think about the clarity, the absolute certainty in his voice when he said he'd rather feel everything than feel nothing. That certainty came from somewhere real. It came from a kid who had been through enough to know the difference, and it landed with enough force to change how Stan and how millions of viewers thought about pain. Think about Kenny at the window, not the costume or the superhero mythology. Think about a brother who shows up, every time, without being asked, without expecting thanks, just shows up because someone he loves needs him. Think about Stan's hand reaching for the hospital door, arriving too late to say goodbye to Kenny. And then think about the fact that the grief Stan felt in that moment, the regret, the wish that he had been braver, that he had shown up sooner, is itself proof of love. You don't grieve for people you don't care about. You don't regret missing a goodbye unless the person you were saying goodbye to mattered. The pain is the receipt. It's the proof of purchase. It confirms that something real was exchanged between two people, and that what was exchanged was valuable enough to miss. South Park will be back next season, and the season after that, and the season after that. It will keep making jokes that make people uncomfortable. It will keep pushing boundaries. It will keep doing the thing it's always done, which is to say the unsayable and laugh at the unlaughable and refuse to treat anything as sacred. But it will also keep doing this, sneaking moments of genuine beauty into the chaos, planting seeds of tenderness in ground that shouldn't be able to grow anything. Because that's the secret of South Park, the one that 3 decades of controversy and profanity and toilet humor can't hide. Trey Parker and Matt Stone care. They care about their characters, they care about their audience, they care about the weird, messy, painful, beautiful experience of being alive. And when they can't hide that caring behind satire, when the defenses drop and the deadline pressure strips away the ironic distance, what comes through is something extraordinary, something heartfelt, from the most unexpected place imaginable. Sleep well. The boys of South Park will be there when you wake up. They always are. Actually, there is one more thing, one more thread that runs through this entire conversation that deserves to be named before we're done. And it has to do with the relationship between Stan Marsh and Kyle Broflovsky. We've touched on it in pieces throughout tonight. Stan offering Kyle his kidney. Kyle showing Kenny a drawing in the hospital. Stan and Kyle's friendship fracturing in "You're Getting Old." Kyle walking to Canada to rescue Ike. But we haven't really sat with what Stan and Kyle's friendship means to the show as a whole. and what it means for the emotional episodes we've been discussing. Because in many ways, their bond is the thing that makes all of the heartfelt moments possible. It's the emotional infrastructure that supports everything else. Stan and Kyle have been best friends since the first episode aired on August 13th, 1997. Their friendship is the single most consistent element of the series. It predates every storyline, every recurring character, every plot arc. When everything else in South Park changes, when characters die and come back, when families break apart and reform, when the town is destroyed and rebuilt, Stan and Kyle are still standing next to each other. They are, in the language of the show, super best friends, and that label, which sounds silly and juvenile, carries a more weight than almost any other relationship description in the series. What makes their friendship emotionally significant is not that it's perfect. It's not. They fight, they disagree. They go through periods where they can barely stand each other. In season 20, during the show's most heavily serialized season, Stan and Kyle are on opposite sides of a conflict that drives a wedge between them for multiple episodes. In You're Getting Old, their friendship appears to end entirely, with Kyle walking away from a despondent Stan without saying a word. These fractures are not glossed over or resolved quickly. The show lets them fester, it lets the distance between the boys grow. It forces the audience to sit with the possibility that this friendship, the bedrock of the series, might not survive. But it always does. Not because the show hits a reset button or manufactures a convenient reconciliation. It survives because Stan and Kyle keep choosing each other, over and over, across decades, through every conflict and every betrayal and every period of distance. They come back to each other because whatever they have, whatever that particular combination of loyalty and irritation and shared history and genuine care amounts to, it's stronger than whatever pulls them apart. The Black Friday trilogy from season 17 captures this beautifully. The boys are split into warring factions based on which gaming console they want to buy on Black Friday. Stan and Kyle end up on opposite sides. The show frames this as a Game of Thrones-style epic conflict complete with betrayals, alliances, and dramatic confrontations. And underneath all the parody, there's a real sting to watching Stan and Kyle oppose each other. Because you know these characters. You've watched them for years, you've seen them at their best and their worst, and seeing them on opposite sides of any conflict, even one as trivial as a console war, activates something in you that goes deeper than the joke. You want them to be okay. You want the friendship to hold. And when it does, when they eventually find their way back to each other, the relief is real. Multiple critics have noted that the Stan and Kyle dynamic functions as the closest thing to an emotional core in a show that deliberately resists having one. IndieWire described their friendship breakup in the Black Friday trilogy as providing some real stakes and gravitas to what is ostensibly a satire about video game console wars. The reason those stakes feel real is accumulated investment. After hundreds of episodes, after watching these two navigate every kind of crisis imaginable, the audience has developed a genuine attachment to the friendship itself. It's not just that we care about Stan, it's not just that we care about Kyle. We care about Stan and Kyle as a unit, as a thing that exists between them, as a bond that is somehow larger than either of them individually. This is what South Park understands about long-form storytelling that many shows don't. When you've been telling stories about the same characters for nearly 30 years, the relationships between those characters accrue a weight that no single episode can create on its own. The heartfelt episodes we've discussed tonight work as well as they do, not just because of their individual merits, but because of everything that came before them. Kenny Dies hits hard because we spent 4.5 years watching Kenny die without consequence. You're Getting Old hits hard because we spent 15 seasons watching Stan and Kyle be inseparable. The landslide montage devastates because every image in it, Stan alone, Kyle walking away, the house being sold, represents the dismantling of something we'd watched being built for a decade and a half. Time is the secret ingredient. Not just the time within the show, but the time the audience has spent with these characters. The years of watching, the shared memories, the inside jokes and running gags, and accumulated knowledge of who these people are and what they mean to each other. Every heartfelt moment in South Park draws on that reservoir of accumulated experience. It's emotional compound interest. The longer you watch, the more each sincere moment costs you because the more you've invested. This is why new viewers who binge South Park from the beginning and arrive at Kenny dies, or You're Getting Old for the first time, often report being blindsided by the emotion. They walked in expecting a crude cartoon. They spent hours watching that crude cartoon. They internalized its rhythms and its defaults. They got comfortable with the irreverence. And then the show shifted registers without warning, and all of that accumulated comfort was weaponized against them. The setup took 4 seasons, or 7 seasons, or 15 seasons, but the payoff was devastating. And that's art. That's what storytelling is supposed to do, not just in the moment, but across time. The best stories are patient. They plant seeds that don't bloom for years. They build structures that look meaningless until suddenly they're the most important thing in the world. South Park has been doing this for nearly 30 years, sometimes intentionally, sometimes accidentally, and the result is a body of work that contains multitudes, profanity and poetry, shock and sincerity, the absolute worst of human behavior and the absolute best, sitting side by side in a show about 4 kids in a small town in Colorado. The night has been long, the stories have been many, and if you've been drifting in and out, catching pieces of this and losing others to sleep, that's okay. That's exactly what tonight was for. The stories will be there if you come back to them. The episodes exist. You can watch them yourself and feel what we've been describing. You can sit with Butters in the rain and Kenny at the window and Stan on the bed and the silence where Chef used to be and the quiet warmth of 2 boys who didn't plan on falling in love, but did it anyway. South Park is not a show that asks for your tears. It's not designed to make you cry. It's designed to make you laugh, to make you uncomfortable, to make you think, and occasionally, when it catches you at the right angle, to make you feel something so unexpected and so real that you don't know what to do with it, except sit there and let it happen. That's what tonight has been, a collection of those moments, strung together, walked through slowly, given the space and the attention they deserve, which is more space and attention than a crude animated comedy usually gets. But South Park has earned it. 28 seasons, 338 episodes, nearly 3 decades of saying the unsayable, and buried in all of that, these extraordinary, impossible, beautiful moments of honesty. The show will keep going. The boys will keep aging without getting older. The town will keep descending into chaos and climbing back out. Parker and Stone will keep sitting in a room at 3 in the morning, writing something true because they've run out of time to write something safe. And somewhere in that process, another heartfelt episode will emerge. Another moment that catches the audience off guard. Another scene that makes people cry at a cartoon they were laughing at 5 minutes earlier. When that happens, you'll know what to do with it. You'll know because Butters already told you. Take the bad with the good. Let the sadness be beautiful. Feel it all and be grateful that you can. The night is yours now. Let it carry you wherever you need to go. And rest knowing that somewhere in a small town in the Colorado mountains, 4 kids are going to be just fine. They've been just fine for almost 30 years. And if a show like South Park can find that much heart in that much chaos, then maybe the rest of us can too. Good night. And one last thought as the quiet settles in. There's a reason this show has outlasted everything, every trend, every controversy, every prediction that it would finally go too far and get canceled, every think piece declaring it irrelevant. It survived all of it because the people who make it understand something that their critics don't. They understand that irreverence without heart is just noise, that shock without sincerity is just cruelty, that the joke only works if somewhere underneath it, you actually care deeply about the people telling it and the people hearing it. Parker and Stone care. They have always cared. They care about Stan Marsh, who carries the weight of understanding too much too young. They care about Kyle Broflovsky, who fights for the people he loves even when the fight seems hopeless. They care about Kenny McCormick, who dies in silence and loves in silence and never once asks for the recognition he deserves. They care about Butterscotch, who walks through a world that treats him terribly and somehow still sees beauty in the bruises. And somewhere in the gap between the profanity and the poetry, between the fart jokes and the funeral speeches, between the chaos and the quiet, that caring comes through. It always has. It always will. For as long as South Park keeps airing, there will be moments that remind you why you started watching in the first place. Not for the shock, not for the outrage, for the 4 kids in the snow, for the friendships that hold, for the small, stubborn, defiant act of caring about something in a universe that offers you every excuse not to. That's what you're falling asleep to tonight, not the chaos, the caring. Let it hold you, let it warm you. And when you wake up tomorrow, carry a little piece of it with you into whatever the day brings. The beautiful sadness, the guardian angel at the window. The kidney offered without hesitation. The montage with no words, just landslide, just silence, just the truth. That's South Park. The show that shouldn't make you feel anything. The show that makes you feel everything. Rest now, because here's the thing about falling asleep to stories. The last thing you hear before you go under tends to linger. It sits in the background of your sleep like a low hum, shaping dreams you won't quite remember in the morning. So let the last thing be this, not the profanity, not the controversy, not the outrage or the offense or any of the things people argue about when they argue about South Park. Let the last thing be Butter's voice, steady and honest in the rain, saying he's sad, saying he's happy that he can be sad, saying the sadness is beautiful because it means something real happened to him, something good, something worth grieving, something worth carrying. That's the show. That's always been the show. And that's enough for tonight.